It's not a keyframe, but it's not really a regular in-between either. The breakdown drawing is created after the key poses and before the in-betweens. That's basically the hierarchy of the drawings that you need to know when you're animating stuff. It's generally the order of how things get animated when you're working pose to pose. So pose to pose animation really means that you've got one key pose and a second key pose plus a breakdown already established, and you work out your in-betweens progressively. The other way of animating is called straight ahead animation, where you just have one key pose and you sort of freestyle it into your second key pose. So you don't really have a second key to reference or to know where you're going. This is very often used in stop motion animation. But for now, we'll work pose to pose. So if you had these two key poses, well, you could assume that your animation or your in-betweens are just going to join up in a straight line and create a smooth, straight animation from one key to the other. But if you were actually given the same two key poses plus this breakdown drawing, then your animation becomes very different. So you know, oh, okay, my in-betweens actually have to come down and then up again. Now, this also brings me to the very important principle in animation of arcs. So I'm just going to take a moment to explain the idea of arcs. In animation, arcs are the most commonly used types of trajectories or paths of action. What that means is that even if a character lifts his hand up to point, that's going to be charted or tracked in an arc. His arm moving from this pose to this pose will actually travel in an arc. If you think about it, arcs are present everywhere. So when you're walking, next time notice how your arms swing in an arc. When you're running, your feet tend to make small little arcs as you run along. Everything really naturally moves in an arc instead of a straight line. Things that move in a straight line from one point to another are often, feel very mechanical. So in animation, this is actually really handy because it just means that you can do something like create a new layer above your keys and draw an arc to use as a guide. You can actually come over to your layer, right-click, and choose guide, and that will ensure that that layer doesn't export out in your final animation when you're finally exporting. So I'm going to use this arc as a guide for where I'm going to place my in-betweens, and then it becomes much easier. And as you can see, that's ends up being quite a smooth and even natural looking movement. Just to recap, your breakdown drawing is the sort of most important in-between, which tells you where the path of action goes, and then your arc will ensure that you've got a nice, smooth and even motion when you do go to in-between.